Hi everyone and welcome back to Fully Playable Games. So on today's video we have got my black DS Lite that is in need of a bit of TLC. So this is actually my other half's granddad's, and I got it out recently and noticed that it needs a bit of a repair. So what we're going to do is in this video we're going to strip it down, and what we'll do is at the beginning I'll show you what's wrong, and then we'll strip it down, get the repair done, and see how it goes. So here we go. Here is the black Nintendo DS Lite, and as I say, this was my other half's granddad's, and it has been in storage for a while, and I pulled it out to add it onto sort of one of the shelves and noticed that there was a couple of issues wrong with it. But what we'll do is we will get it sort of powered on. So it does need a bit of a clean. We'll get it turned on and see if we can see the issues. So it all turns on really well. Obviously it's got the black stylus, and you'll see there on the top screen we've got the lines, sort of the vertical lines on the screen. So it basically signifies that the screen is basically dead. So in this video we are going to be stripping down the DS to get to the screen, and we're going to be replacing that top screen, and it should load the cart, but I'm having to sort of pull it in and out a bit just to sort of get it to sort of recognise. I'm not sure whether it's the game cart at this point or the DS. I think it's the game cart. I'm just going to restart the unit with the cart actually in the DS, and there you go, it comes up straight away. So it's the fact that I sort of put the cart in sort of while the DS was turned on. But yeah, so that top screen is basically in desperate need of being replaced. So we are going to get that replaced today. So what we'll do is we'll pull the cart out and we will get started stripping down the DS. So on the back you will see you've got the two rubber stops just at the top there. You need to pry them off because there are screws underneath. You've got two screws on the left side, and then there are two more screws underneath the battery compartment. So the battery compartment is the bit on the right. So you've got a single, I believe it's a Phillips that side, but the rest are tri-wing. So you just basically need to undo the battery compartment and remove the battery. And I'll try and do it with my finger and sort of quickly realise that I don't have the fingernails for it. So I'm just going to get a spudger to sort of get that out. So there's a little recess sort of there on the right that will just allow you to pull the battery out, and then you'll see there's two more screws underneath the battery. Sorry, three more screws underneath the battery, should I say? And they all need to be removed in order to take the unit apart. So what we're going to do is I'm going to skip over sort of me taking the screws out, and we will skip to the unit when we've got the bottom off. So here we are, we've got the bottom of the case open. Literally, sort of once you've undone the screws, it just lifts off. There's no on the DS. There's no connecting cables or anything to the bottom cover. So we've got the shoulder button here that sort of popped off as I was undoing the cover, and I just want to make sure I know sort of how the spring fits before I completely remove it. So I'm going to take that one and the left side as well and just stick them off to the side. So just be careful, you have got the pivot pin in the middle which can just fall out. And there is the spring. So I'll stick all that off to the top, and then we've got 2 screws holding the main board in, so we're going to remove them and then cut to unplugging the screen. So we've got those 2 screws out now, so it's just a case of lifting the board up, and you'll see there you've got the bottom screen, and then this cable here is the cable for the top screen. So we just need to lift the plastic clip up, and then it should, in theory, just sort of fall out, but this one is being a bit stubborn. So you'll see there it is not playing ball. So I am going to use the tweezers. Obviously I'm using metal tweezers here, but the only reason I'm using them is because this is a dead screen. If this was a proper, or if this was the new screen that was going in, I would not be using metal tweezers. But there we go, we pulled that one off. And then that is all that is the motherboard separated. We've got one cable there which is for the Wi-Fi antenna. I think I do unplug that in a bit. So now we're going to remove the hinges that connect the top and bottom part of the case. And then there's a little groove just on the right, on the, well, top on what you can see as the top of your screen. And that allows you to sort of pass the cable for the screen through. So just be careful as you're pulling it through. Obviously in this case I'm not sort of as careful as you should be, but that's because it's the screen itself is going in the bin. And then on the top screen itself, I will move all the other bits off to the side in a second. So the top screen itself, there are these 4 black covers, and these are actually covering the screws up for the top screen. So you just need to sort of carefully pry them up. I am going to be sort of reusing these, and then it will show you to the 4 screws underneath. So I've got the 4 screws out now, and it is just going to be a case of sort of opening the case. So I'm going to use a pry tool to get the top of the cover off, and that one doesn't work too well, so I'm going to try this one. It did take me quite a while to sort of get this top cover off, which I later found out is it actually slides apart. So the top and the bottom slide in sort of different directions, and that allows you to sort of get them open sort of a bit easier. But I managed to get it off without doing any damage. And there we go. So we've got the top screen there, we've got the 2 speakers, and then that little circuit board just at the top there is going to be for the Wi-Fi. And then what we need to do is basically pry the screen out of the top housing. So once again, I am being a bit more forceful than I would normally, just because obviously this screen is dead, and it is pretty much. I say that I am going to keep the screen. The screen is going to be used as a sort of a test screen, more just for sort of testing the units, but it won't ever go back into sort of a fully working unit. And then there's adhesive sort of all around, and then there's a big sort of clump of adhesive down the bottom as well. So we just need to pry the screen up carefully, because as I say, I do still want to use it for sort of testing. And then there's a bit of tape going across the bottom that sort of covers the cable for the speaker on the left hand side. And then once that's removed, you can then sort of just lift the screen up a bit, and then put our pry tool sort of just down in the screen, just to sort of break off the adhesive down at the bottom there. And there we go. So that is the screen out of the housing, but we have still got to deal with the ribbon cable. So the way that the ribbon cable works on the DS is it's passed through the hinge. So what you need to do is you need to actually roll it to get it in and out. So what we'll do is we'll move the speakers out of the way, and then we literally just roll the cable up, and then it gets passed through. There's a little sort of metal sort of grommet basically that allows it to sort of pass it through. And once again, I am using sort of the metal tweezers, but the screen isn't that important, so obviously if I do break it in removal, it's not a massive loss. As I say, sort of it's only after I filmed the video that I decided, sort of because it was in working condition, I could use it as a sort of test screen going forward. So what we'll do is we'll move that top panel sort of just off to the side. Obviously we're not going to remove any of the Wi-Fi antennas, there's absolutely no need. I'm just going to push it all back in, because it's all been sort of pulled up sort of as I was pulling the screen out. And yeah, so we'll move that off. And now we've got to remove the speakers from the screen. So I'm going to get the soldering iron sort of powered on and get that heating up so that we can get them swapped over to the new screen. So here we are. I've got the soldering iron all powered on and ready to go. And what we're going to need to do is, on the ribbon cable itself, the 2 speaker wires for each speaker have to be removed and then transferred over to the new one. So I am literally just going to be sort of touching the soldering iron onto them to remove them, but in order to do that I'm going to put some clean solder onto the soldering iron, and as you see, they then just sort of pop off straight away. Really easy to remove them. And my soldering iron, I believe, is set to 425 degrees. So it shouldn't have any problem in sort of melting the solder. And there we go. This is the replacement screen. And essentially all we have to do now is just reattach the speakers to the same point that we removed them. So what we'll do is put some fresh solder sort of onto the end of the soldering iron, and then we will sort of solder the contacts on the strip. That way it's a bit easier to actually get the cable to sort of solder on, instead of trying to actually solder the cable and put new solder onto the pad at the same time. Just bring the tweezers in, just makes it a bit easier to control sort of the cable as I'm doing the soldering. And I made a bit of a mess of the solder there, but I am going to clean it up in a second. So there's a little trail off there that I'm just going to sort of take off, just because obviously I want it to be as clean as tidy as possible. And there we go. So that is the left speaker attached. And what we'll do is we will rinse and repeat for the right side speaker. So we have the speakers both attached now. So I'm going to put it back into the top housing. And I will move it up into the camera view in a second. Obviously the screen's now in, and it's just going to be a case of sort of putting the speakers in their place and passing that cable through the grommet. So I'm going to move the wireless antenna sort of out of the way, just so that there's no cables sort of in the grommet before we start moving things through. So obviously they will pass through the centre of the grommet. So what we need to do is just roll the ribbon cable, and you need to be careful with that when you're doing this, because you can rip the cable. You have to wind it up sort of fairly tight, but not too tight. And then it is just a case of sort of passing it through. But it's extremely fiddly to sort of get it wound to a point that it'll actually fit through the grommet. I think it is literally just as wide as the actual end of the ribbon cable. It's going to take me a couple of attempts to sort of get it through. I'm just going to very gently sort of use the tweezers to sort of pull it through a bit more. Obviously, I am going to try and get hold of a pair of ceramic tweezers so that I can use them on ribbon cables without sort of the worry of doing any damage. And there we go, we are through. So the ribbon cable all looks okay. So what we're going to do is position the screen now, put the speakers back in. This is one of the Wi-Fi antennas. It's got to be passed underneath. We'll put that through. And then just put it back into the little recess that's there. Then we'll pass the other Wi-Fi antenna through. And put the little antenna board sort of just on the top. I want to try and make sure that sort of all the cables are sort of run sort of exactly where they need to, so that it all fits back together sort of in the correct way. And then we can flip the screen over and put it back into the housing. So I just want to give it a bit of a clean before we do that, just to make sure that there's no dust sort of on the lens, because otherwise it will just be a complete sort of strip down again in order to sort of get rid of that. So I'm using a microfiber cloth, the same sort of cloth actually you'd use to sort of clean glass, like reading glasses or sunglasses with. Just making sure that sort of I get every little bit sort of fingerprint or bit of dust that I can see, and flip it over and just make sure all the cables are sort of out of the way. And there we go, so the screen is now back in. We can put the speakers back in, and just make sure you actually get the speaker in the right way round. And then it is going to be a case of just reassembly. Okay, so here we go. We've got the DS back together now. I'm just going to put the rubber feet back into the top part here. And then it's just a case of loading the battery in and putting the battery cover back on. And then we'll put the cartridge cover back in as well. And now let's get it tested. So we turn it on. It all comes straight to life. And obviously, because we've had it all apart, we have got to go through the setup again. So what I'll do is I will speed through this part, and then we'll get to the actual sort of testing it with a cart. So there you go, we are through the initial setup, and as you would have seen, I was testing sort of all of the buttons as we were going through the setup as well, just to make sure sort of everything was working. And now I'll put the cartridge in, Hopefully it will pick it up. No, I have to turn it off and turn it back on. And there we go, the cartridge is picked up. And you see straight away there is no lines on the top screen. So that is all good to go. So that is going to be it. So really happy with the way that this turned out. It wasn't too much of a difficult repair. But with that said, that is going to be the end of today's video. So if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you're not already, subscribe to the channel. But thank you so much for watching today. As I say, I really hope you enjoyed it. I really hope you found the video useful. And with that said, I will see you on the next one. Alright, bye.